And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network covering IU women's basketball. I'm your host, Jeff Marlow. I'm also joined by my co-host, Kathy Amos. And tonight we are discussing Sunday's 87-24 romp over Morehead State and yesterday's 67-50 victory over Butler by your number 4/number 3 Indiana Hoosiers to improve to 12-0. Their best start to a season under Coach Morin and their best start since 2013-2014 under then Coach Kurt Miller. But let's start this show the way we start every show, and that is with our banner moment. And tonight's banner moment for me came in the Morehead State game when the Hoosiers recorded their third biggest winning margin in program history. The 63-point victory was the largest margin of victory since they defeated Illinois by 60 points all the way back in 1974, part of the 1974-75 season. So congratulations to the Hoosiers. Our banner moment is sponsored by Home Field Apparel. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating their products for schools in their existing line. You are bound to find something for you or as a gift as we near holiday season. And, probably too late for the holiday season. Get it for the new year. So whether you want only IU gear or other college teams or nothing associated with a team, Home Field probably has something for you. Go to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME, HOME, to get 15% off your entire first order. That's promo code HOME for 15% off. And once again, the website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. And we're going to kick it over to Kathy for the Amos angle and get her initial thoughts about the games or anything else on her mind.
Yeah, well, first, happy holidays and soon to be a happy new year to everyone out there listening and all our Hoosier fans following along here tonight live in the chat or listening later. It's always a pleasure to have you along for the ride here tonight. So, yeah, Jeff, I mean, again, just another couple of games of great basketball from our women. Of course, both games I think of had a few things here and there that I'm sure we'll talk about that could be cleaned up more a little bit on the Butler side. Because really, I don't know there's much to say about that Morehead State game other than, wow, that was some amazing defense, I think, from our women. So super proud of our ladies. Just an amazing start at 12-0. One of only, I think, 10 teams left in NCAA that are undefeated, or at least as of a couple of days ago. And, Ari sent us some numbers, their net ratings now at 4, and just some really fantastic basketball being played for women and still being down grace. So I think, they're looking really good, and I'm excited to continue watching them as they start now into the heart of Big Ten play.
Yeah, and obviously we're going to preview our next opponent a little bit later in the show, but we'll get back into Big Ten play with the next game as the team has just a little over a week off in between games. So, Kathy, let's just take that into where we are and go with as expected. What kind of win is it? What was one of the things or a couple things that you thought went as expected in these two games?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, I think the defense in both games went as expected. Again, we've become really reliant on our defense. It's the calling card for Coach Morin's team, and holding Morehead State to 24 points, and then even holding Butler to 50 points. I mean, this is an improved Butler squad, so it's not like they play in the Big East, and they've had some nice improvements here. Even if you just look at their record, it doesn't quite reflect, I think, them. Plus, they were down 2 starters, so I think that says something for them as well, that they really didn't give up. So for me, as expected, once again, was definitely the defense. How about you?
Yeah, I thought just, again, still the ability to share the ball. Now, again, obviously, against Morehead State, they were just a better team. And like you said, kudos to Morehead State for continuing to fight and claw. But we were the better team. But 21 assists on 33 made baskets in the Morehead State game. And then in the Butler game, 15 assists on 24 makes. So that was to me, just again, the ability to share the ball and things that I thought that just kind of keeps reinforcing what we've seen from this team, that especially when they are sharing the ball. And I thought one thing yesterday in the Butler game a little bit, I thought they got a little stagnant coming out of halftime.
Yeah.
And I thought but again, I get that happens in the course of a game, but when they're moving both themselves and the ball, and I thought one of the really key plays or segments in that game yesterday, again, back to the as expected, moving the ball, Lexi Bargesser makes a great back cut. Chloe Moore McNeil hits her for a layup. She gets a bucket. And then I think it was the very next possession, she gets a ball on a run out and gets a 3-point play out of it. So those two plays I really thought kind of got back, at least getting kind of back into the flow in the second half. But when I watch them play, that's what I really get a kick out of it. And it's become almost an expectation is to watch them move and cut and share the ball.
Yeah, and I think I'll piggyback a little bit off of that and delve into Chloe Moore McNeil. Actually, Jeff, she has become, as expected, just that person is going to do all of the little things that add up to a lot of things. And for me, I think what you're talking about is the assist with the team. I think Chloe, again, led the team for sure, I know, in the Butler game. But I was looking earlier today at actually some of the Big Ten numbers, and Chloe actually in the Big Ten as of right now is 5th in the Big Ten in average assists per game. But she actually leads the league in assist to turnover ratio. And I think it's just something that we've now really come to expect from Chloe. And I don't think she disappointed us in either one of these games. So that is definitely something I'm starting to come to expect from her. So loving her play for sure.
Well, and I was listening to it on the radio yesterday because I was actually out traveling a little bit yesterday before the storm was coming in tonight. But I think Austin jinxed her a little bit. I think he said that coming into the game, it was yesterday, they'd played 11 games yesterday. She only had 10 turnovers for the season coming into the yesterday. And I think he said she was maybe like 8th in the country in assist to turnover ratio. Well, then she had 3 turnovers yesterday. Right. So Austin jinxed her a little bit, got her up to above one just slightly above 1 turnover per game. But I agree with you. I think, and let's face it, this may be a good segue into surprises a little bit, but it's also, I think we thought, you were one that called this, that you really thought Chloe Moore McNeil was going to make a big step up this year. And now with Grace Berger having been out, she's the one that has really stepped up her game, kind of taken that role that we all thought Grace Berger was going to have. And she's done a really good job with it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jeff. So I think for me, her play is as expected now. But if you would have asked me at the beginning of the season, I really thought she was going to be more of a shooting 3-point threat. Mm-hmm. And she's not that she's a slouch on shooting threes at all. She's just not out there to score points. And she contributes, and she'll have she's got quite a few games where she's double digits, but she's not leading the team. That's not her role. And I feel like she really knows and understands that role. And her role right now, especially with Grace out, is to be out there and be the ball handler for the most part, and to distribute and get the ball to her team when she needs to. We saw that. At least I thought I saw that a lot in the Butler game between her and Mackenzie. I think their chemistry in particular is just really gelling this year in particular. And you could tell they've now played a couple of seasons together. And so I think she's really come on into a very interesting role for this team in a good way.
Well, and she's one that also, as I went back and watched the replay, or not the replay, I went back and watched the BTN Plus telecast today a little bit, and she's shooting like 93% from the free throw line. Yeah. So right now she's leading
the Big Ten in that too.
Yeah. So she's one that you kind of want there. You want her to get more opportunities, and you obviously will want her there in clutch situation, which is what you want. You want your ball handler to be that person that you can be like, hey, we need you to go to the line, knock down free throws. We want the ball to be in your hands. I'm going to go to kind of a negative here on the surprise, and this is kind of even goes back to the Penn State game, and that's the turnovers. Yes. I know they only had 12 yesterday, but they had like 6 or 7 in the first quarter. And
they had
so
yesterday.
Huh?
They had 16 yesterday, and they had 12 against Morehead State.
I'm sorry, I had them flipped around. You're right. Yes, 16 yesterday, 12 against Morehead State. But even that, when you're winning by 60, I think 12 is a couple too many. But my understanding is, I didn't get to see the post game with Coach Moore, but my understanding is that she was not very happy with the way they played, especially with the turnovers. But this also kind of went back into the Penn State game that we talked about last week. And so that's a little bit, I guess, surprising. And can we start to get that back under control a little bit? Because some of the ones that we made yesterday watching the broadcast, they just weren't even, I mean, they were just some bad passes. I mean, they weren't even really on the mark. It wasn't like somebody dropped a good pass, went through their hands. It was just a couple of them, 2, 3, 4 of them just went out of bounds. And so that would be a little bit of a concern of mine. And not just because Chloe had 3, but the number, and like I said, had 6, I believe, in the first quarter against Butler yesterday.
Yeah, that was actually the biggest thing I had as a surprise, especially from yesterday. 16 turnovers. Yarden Garzon had 5 of them yesterday, and I thought she had quite a few, and 3. So 3 out of 12 against Morehead State. So that's definitely something I would like to see cleaned up from Yarden for sure, is just, taking care of the ball. And Sydney gets a little pass happy too. And it seemed to me that a lot of the turnovers, at least that I could witness yesterday, were just unforced, kind of like errant passes.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't so much like Butler's defense was forcing it. It just seemed like they weren't quite focused. And actually, Coach Moore says something in her press conference about the same thing, that they didn't seem quite focused. And I thought it was kind of funny. She said maybe they were just too excited about, and they got sped up, and maybe they're just too excited about going to open presents, right? So, definitely coaches see them. Obviously the same thing, or we're seeing the same thing Coach is seeing, which is definitely turnovers and just keeping their focus a little bit more in these games. So hopefully they can clean that up going into Big Ten play next week.
And I'll kick this one off a little bit. I'm going to talk about a couple individuals that I'm sure we're going to talk about as we get inside the numbers. But it was nice to see, maybe we shouldn't say surprised, but it was nice to see Alyssa Geary back in the lineup, or back in the rotation a little bit over the last 2 games. It was nice to see some of the bench get a little more run in these 2 games, because I really still think the bench needs to develop some depth so we don't feel like we're wearing down at the end of the year. So it was nice in these 2 games. I'll throw it in here as a surprise, not really a surprise, more just a pleasant thing to see, is that the bench really got some extended run and produced.
Yeah, the flip side of that actually did surprise me yesterday is when we were up 17 with still 4 or 5 minutes left to go, and you have a 17-point lead. And at one point, I think we had at least 4 of our 5 starters out there. So while the bench got a lot more played than they have been, I actually expected a little more of it down those last 4 or 5 minutes. I mean, Mackenzie Holmes was still out there with 52 seconds left yesterday. Just didn't quite understand why we had any of our starters still playing that deep into a game when you're up 17 points. Mackenzie only had 29 minutes, so she definitely was lower than what we normally give her. But again, for me anyway, I wouldn't want to risk injury of any of my starters when you're up 15 points with 2 minutes left, right? Like I would really like to have seen her pull the starters from the bench and or put the starters on the bench and put more of the bench players in. There were a few players that we didn't even see yesterday. I thought maybe would have gotten in those last 2 minutes. So yes, I'm glad to see that the bench got more minutes. I was just a little surprised that it was that deep into the game that we still saw a lot of the starters.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to some of the things we've talked a little bit about, just in things we're seeing, that there's really kind of a trust that Coach Moore hasn't gotten to with some of those kids yet in the rotation. But again, Alyssa Geary had 7 minutes yesterday. The one that was a little surprising yesterday was Henna only ended up with 3 minutes, or 4 minutes. She was at 3 minutes, 52 seconds. And then Lily Meister was just over 4 minutes.
Yeah.
So, but anything else you haven't?
That was kind of the surprise in that.
You got any other surprises you want to talk about?
No, I don't think so.
All right. So let's go inside the numbers. And we've talked a little bit about some, but is there a team stat that we haven't talked about yet in either game that you want to go to?
Yeah, actually one that we haven't talked on a whole lot, this year, which was a really nice one to see yesterday, is 12 of 13 from the free throw line. We had several people get to the line. We had 4 players get to the line and only 1 miss. So I thought that was really nice to see that they were able to get up. Maybe 13 would maybe see a little bit more, but I know there've been a couple of games where we're down in the low 70s for shooting percentage. So it's nice to see that kind of work its way up there too. That was definitely one stat I liked seeing yesterday.
Yeah, and one I was going to point to was kind of along that same line was shooting was you combine the two games with Morehead State and Butler, we were 16 of 36 from three. 16 of 36. If I'm doing my math right, that's somewhere around 42% that we were shooting for the combined for the two games. And again, you talked about Yarden Garzon struggling with turnovers, but she's not struggling shooting the ball behind the line. She was 4 for 6 against Morehead State, and she was 3 for 5 yesterday against Butler. So she's definitely found her role in that respect as right now, not only our best 3-point shooter, but one of the best in the country.
Yeah, she was 3 of 8 actually yesterday, but yeah, regardless, it's still close to 50%. That's okay. There's a lot of numbers to cover in 2 games. So yeah, I mean, as a team, they were 7 of 20 yesterday from 3-point. So that was, I guess, maybe a little bit of a surprise. Again, we saw yet another game from Sarah Scalia where I didn't feel she looked super confident shooting the ball. She ended up only taking 4 3-pointers and made one of them. So I was a little surprised at that. And Chloe seemed a little off on her shot too. We've kind of, again, she doesn't take a high volume, but she was 0 of 3 yesterday. So overall, though, the team was, 7 of 20, shooting 35%, which is fine. But if you, just get 1 or 2 more baskets from Sarah and Chloe, which we kind of come to expect, that percentage gets up a lot closer to that 40% range that we like to see.
Yeah. And then the other thing, you got anything else on team stats you want to talk about?
No, we can go into individual.
I just do want to point out one thing for any of our listeners and people watching here and the workaholics on the live YouTube feed. In the Morehead State game, we held them to single digits in every quarter, 4, 8, 5, and 7. I mean, it was almost like a pick 4 number, So, I mean, that was how good our defense was. And again, I realize Morehead State was not the best opponent we're going to see all year. But still, when you hold a Division I team to 4 straight quarters of single digits, that's to me, that's a stat worth mentioning. So I wanted to throw that out there. And then, so Kathy, I'll let you go ahead and go first. What about individuals?
Yeah, I think, for me, I'm going to jump right to Butler and start with Lexus Bargesser. Sorry. Lexus, I thought she had her best game for sure in an Indiana uniform so far this year, right? So just rattling off her stat line. So she played 19 minutes. I'm not sure if she's gotten to double digit minutes. If she has, it's only been maybe 10 or 11, but she was 3 of 5 shooting, 2 of 3 from the line. She had 6 rebounds for us, only 1 foul, only 1 turnover, 2 assists, a block, and a steal, and so ended up with 8 points. She just really looked comfortable out there, and like she's really starting to get into the flow of the game. And I thought also, to me, Jeff, and you tell me if I just saw this wrong, I felt like she was handling the ball a lot more than we've seen in the past. And, even when Chloe was out there, she was still kind of the one that was initiating the offense. But did you notice that as well?
Yeah, I did. And go back to the Morehead State game. She played 18 minutes, just over 18 minutes in that game, played almost 19 yesterday. And I know there had been some discussions about maybe they were trying to limit minutes, but I've said all along, I thought that she was one that needed more minutes. And I thought she brought something to the floor. There was a basketball IQ there. And I think really at the beginning of the year, the plan was kind of slide her in, let her learn behind Grace Berger and get some minutes here and there. But I really thought she was going to be that backup point early in the year. But then when Grace goes down early, in the season, I think that kind of, Terry's like, well, who do I trust here? Do I trust the freshman or do I trust Chloe Moore McNeil, who's been around for 3 years? And I think that was an easy decision for her, and rightfully so. But I really think Bargesser yesterday, especially, when you're putting crooked numbers up, as we used to say in coaching, or I used to, if you're putting crooked numbers in the stat sheet, it's hard to keep her on the bench. And I think that she just brings a certain dynamic that you got to keep trying to find a way to get her, even against better competition. I think you got to get her 10 to 12 minutes on the floor, if not a little more. I'm going to kind of jump there and stick with the bench on the individual numbers. And I'll go back again, Morehead State, but Lily Meister, who had not done a lot since the first few games, but against Morehead State in almost 16 minutes, 7 points, 8 rebounds, and assists, and 2 steals. And I really think Lily has a bright future. Again, she's playing behind Mackenzie Holmes, and to a certain degree, Alyssa Geary has taken some minutes away from her. And I'm not sure she's quite ready for the bump and grind of a Big Ten schedule. I think that we'll see her minutes probably go down a little bit. But I really like her upside. I really like her future. So it was nice to see her get some extended run against a team like Morehead State. And then yesterday she only got 4 minutes, but she also, at least in her 4 minutes, she provided, 2 rebounds. And so she was doing something positive in the stat column.
Right. Yeah. I like Lily too. I think, she's is a freshman, so not surprising to see one game against Morehead State where she's, has a really complete game, and then maybe off a little bit against Butler with a little tougher competition in that Butler game. But yeah, I still like what I see from her, and I see a really bright future for her. And I love that she's being able to play behind Mackenzie this year, really learn from Mackenzie, I'm sure, in practice, and actually getting into the game and like you said, contributing meaningful minutes. So I think that's really fantastic. So I'm going to switch over a little bit to Yarden Garzon and talk about both of her games. So in the Morehead State game, she played around 18 minutes. She ended up leading the team with 16 points and only had 2 turnovers there, compared to the Butler game where she played 37 minutes. So she played almost the entire game and still contributed 13 points. The downside in that game was 5 turnovers. But the one thing that I'm really liking to see from Yarden, which is when we had talked about maybe a couple of weeks ago, is her propensity to foul and get into foul trouble. Mm-hmm. And I feel like she's really cut back on this. Yesterday in that Butler game, she didn't have a single foul, which is back to why she was able to play 37 minutes and contribute. And I think we need to continue seeing that from her as we head into conference plays here. So I really liked Yarden's play. The one downside with her is I think her turnovers. Again, freshman thing, but clearly high basketball IQ, and I just don't think that we'll continue seeing that all through the year. And we'll probably have these games with hers too, right? Where maybe she has a lot of turnovers, and then maybe another game it comes to her a little better and a lot less. But we've already seen an adjustment from her with the fouling, so I like a lot of what I see from her.
Yeah, and I kind of will point out one here is, and Sydney Parrish basically over these 2 games basically played a solid Sydney Parrish game. She wasn't outstanding in either game. I'm not trying to say anything negative in that when I make that comment. It was just a solid Sydney Parrish game. She had 12 points and 3 rebounds against Morehead State, along with 3 steals. And then yesterday she had 10 points, 4 rebounds, and an assist and a steal. So just a solid game by Sydney. Now, yesterday she had a little bit of the turnover bug. She was one that had 3 turnovers as well, and a couple of them were hers that I saw were just kind of passed right.
Yep.
Yeah, just throw it away. So, but overall, I thought Sydney was solid.
Yeah.
Over these couple games. So, anybody else you want to talk about as far as the numbers are?
Probably not in this segment. Maybe we'll save some of them going into our next segment.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So let's go ahead and we'll move on.
All right, sounds good.
So we'll move on to our game ball awards, and let's start with the Morehead State game. And Kathy, since I'm hosting tonight as on the mic, you go ahead and pick first.
All right. So for the Morehead State game, I actually had Yarden Garzon. I thought outside of her 3 turnovers, I thought she just had a really nice complete game. She also contributed 3 assists for us, a block, led the team in scoring. I mean, she was 4 or 6 from behind the arc. And so she can score in just so many different ways. I just think that she's really going to be an amazing player to watch over the next few years. So for me in that Morehead State game, I'm giving mine to Yarden.
Yeah, even with the 3 turnovers, I agree. I had Yarden Garzon picked for my game ball in the Morehead State game, and I also was the 3 assists. She even though she did have 3 turnovers, she also was able to catch 3 dimes and set up her teammates for buckets. So, but I really liked. Again, I didn't watch a whole lot of the Morehead State game. I was gone, and after we blew them out by 60, I really didn't go back and watch a ton. I watched a few minutes here and there, but I think you make a really good point. Yarden has the ability. We maybe haven't quite seen it all put together yet, but I think you're going to be able to see her eventually, whether it's this year or over the course of her career, she's going to be kind of a 2-level player, or even maybe a 3-level player. She can score in the mid range, she can hit the three, and obviously, and then maybe and finish at the rim. We saw a little bit of her earlier this year, posting up a little bit and finishing around the rim, and so. But I think that she really her upside, and especially in the future when she's really going to be kind of one of the dominant players on this program, is really, really high. So I was with you. I thought Yarden deserved the game ball coming out of the Morehead State game.
Yeah, awesome.
So we'll go to yesterday's game with Butler.
All right. Yeah. So for the Butler game, I'm giving my game ball to Mackenzie Holmes. She had 21 points in only 29 minutes. So, she's averaging 19-point games a game, 19 points per game. I'll get it. Just actually under 20, 19.9. She's actually second in the Big Ten in scoring per game right now, behind Caitlin Clark, right? So, she is just really, I think, showing a complete game all around for us. And again, she also contributed 7 rebounds and 3 assists. And 0 turnovers. So that was something we saw, again, back to Yarden, she's cleaned up the fouls. I think Mackenzie's cleaned up her footwork a little bit. We're seeing a little bit of times where she was shuffling her feet before she put put the ball on the floor. We're not seeing that anymore. So she had 0 turnovers in those 29 minutes against Butler as well, and 4 for 4 from the line. So again, just a really nice complete game, and did it all in 29 minutes, which was close to the fewest of all of the starters. So I really like Mackenzie's game yesterday.
Yeah, I'm with you. So here we are in agreement, right on, again, 2 for 2, and also made a 3 yesterday. She was 1 for 1, but banked it in. I wish we could give Mackenzie on a show. And I'd be like, hey, Mackenzie, remember that game against did you call that bank? Did you call that bank? But they all count in the stat sheet, and nobody's going to remember it was banked in except for us on this show. And if somebody goes back to watch it. But again, like you said, 21 points in 29 minutes, a very efficient 8 of 12 from the field, 4 of 4 at the line, which for Mac is really huge, because as you get into Big Ten play, you can expect her to get fouled a little more often as the post play probably picks up in intensity. The fouls maybe get called a little bit more in Big Ten play, and she's got to be able to knock them down. And she does like she did yesterday, then that just really makes it even more difficult to guard somebody like Mac, because you don't want to foul her if she's going to knock down free throws. So I totally was with you 100% on Mackenzie being the game ball for yesterday.
Yep. Great.
All right. So let's move on to the Hoosier Hustle, and we'll talk about Kathy. We'll let you go again as well, and you will have the Morehead State game first.
All right, Morehead State. This one was, again, another one of those games where we can probably give this to a number of players. We got a lot of players that ended up coming in and playing. Would we end up with 13 players played? All of them but one scored. Hannah Sandvik was the only one who didn't score, which was interesting. I saw in Coach Morin's press conference comments that she said, at the end of the game, they realized she wasn't the only one that scored, and they were actually really trying to get her the ball so she could score, and just couldn't quite finish that there at the last minute or so of the game. But for me, I'm going to land on actually Lily Meister. We talked a little bit about her in one of the earlier segments, and I just thought it was a nice complete game from Lily. Again, 16 points. She was 3 of 5 from the field, but she contributed a lot in terms of not just scoring, right? We talked about that. Rebounds, 8 rebounds, and only 1 turnover and assist, and 2 steals. So to me, I thought in the amount of time Lily got in there, I thought that was a nice showing from her.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Lloyd. Now, I will also point out, though, I thought maybe Alyssa Geary. I did give some consideration to Alyssa Geary in this game. Alyssa had 6 points, 5 rebounds, 2 assists, and a steal. But I was with you, and I'd already talked about her earlier. I had Lily Meister picked for my Hustle Award here, but I did have a little bit of I did go a little bit of like, what about Alyssa here? But I just really thought Lily was the better choice.
I thought about Sydney Parrish too. Again, back to, Sydney had 3 steals and 12 points, and, is again, I think we could have gone a number of ways. So, but yeah, Lily, I think is a good answer.
Well, and I think for me, I'll ask you this. Well, we got a few minutes here. For me, oftentimes, I'm really looking for somebody off the bench for this award. But again, we've had games where we just haven't been very deep on the bench
Yeah.
or to get that kind of production. So a lot of times our starters are getting hustle awards, and sometimes the starters do deserve a hustle award. Don't get me wrong. But I really thought in these two games, these were games where we could really find somebody who brought some energy off the bench and showed some flashes of what they can do. So with that segue, let's go on to the Butler game. Who did you have?
Sure. So that's actually a really nice segue because I have somebody coming off of our bench, and that's Lexus Bargesser. Again, to me, this was a pretty easy one to pick for the Hustle Award, although I guess we'll see, because absolutely you could find somebody else in there too, because I think we had a number of players who had great games. But again, seeing Lexus come in and remind everyone too, and maybe they don't realize that they see the large knee brace. I mean, she just tore her ACL earlier this year. It wasn't like this was a year and change ago. It was earlier this year. She was back in, wasn't it in 22?
No, she tore it in the beginning of her season last year at 21.
Oh,
in high school.
The 21-22
so
season.
But still, just over a year. I mean, this is a kid that was running track
in
last
the
spring.
Yes. Yes. So, I think that's just amazing because a lot of times those ACL, you're going to see at least well over a year before they're doing anything. And she's coming in. She seemed calm yesterday. She was, again, I thought, initiating the offense very well and just played a really great game. So for me, Lexus Bargesser gets my Hustle Award.
Yeah, I went with Lexi too. I thought Lexi Bargesser was the odds-on choice here, and I'm going to go with her. Again, 3 for 5, 2 of 2 at the line. She earned that Hustle Award in my book.
Yep. Oh, and I forgot to put the little tickers up. So
yeah, I tried to put it up because I saw you had put it up, but I forgot to put it as a. That's the game ball.
The game ball. So
that's the game ball. When I made the ticker, I didn't make it a ticker. It's a banner and it just stays there. So there you go. So I forgot to make it a ticker, and that's my fault.
Okay. That's okay. It happens. So there's some numbers for it.
so that's going to put, I believe, Lexi Bargesser's first Hustle Award as well. And then Lily Meister will move up to 1.5.
Yeah.
She earned a half of one earlier in the year. So, and that'll take us into lingering questions, Kathy. And I'll ask, I had a couple that I posted to us in the run sheet. If you've got something, feel free to bring it up. Obviously, the workaholics here, if you have any lingering questions, put them in the chat. We'll try and get to them. We are a little bit limited on time tonight because AC Radio will be on here at the top of the hour. But after these two games, have the Hoosiers discovered some much needed depth, or was it more about quality of opponent?
Yeah, that's definitely one on my mind, and especially again after Butler. Again, maybe I'm picking a few nits here with it, but I just feel like we could have actually gotten our bench a little bit more run, especially late in that game. So I'm not 100% sold. We've seen that in other games where we get in and the bench really tightens up. But I'm really seeing positive signs from Lexus. I've seen a few signs here from Lily Meister in particular. So I think that our bench is definitely going to be more of a contributing factor for our games in a positive way than it was last year, which was actually more of a negative way because it was close to non-existent, especially once we got hit with some of the injuries last year. So I'm not 100% sure, which is probably why it's still a lingering question.
Yeah, and I'm with you. I think it's maybe right now maybe a little bit more about the opponent than it was the depth. But it was nice to see us get some run. And like you said earlier, McKenzie played less than 30 minutes in both games. I think that's huge that somebody like McKenzie that we're really going to rely on to provide a lot of scoring right now is able to get some much needed rest from games where we don't have to run her out there for 35, 37 minutes because we are going to as we go along. Yes. And I'm going to hopefully this won't be the broadcaster jinx, but obviously, as we said at the top of the show, 12-0, best start ever under Terry Moore. And we have 14-0 all the way back in 2014-15 was the best start. It's the best start at least since then. I think that's the program's best record or best start ever under Kurt Miller.
I think so.
With that. So how long can the Hoosiers keep the undefeated streak going, Kathy?
That's a great question. I haven't looked much past the next two games. So the next game, which we'll get into in depth, I know is Michigan State. And then after that, we have Nebraska at home. So it's on the road for Michigan State and at home from Nebraska. Are they winnable games? For sure. But will they be like the last couple of games? No, Absolutely. They're definitely going to have to step up, I think, their level of play if they want to get to that 14-0 mark. But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibilities. We'll get into Michigan State. Nebraska is going to be the wild card, even though it's at home. Nebraska has been playing some good numbers. I think they ended up winning last night as well. Or at least they took I can't remember who it is now. Sorry, but they took someone down to overtime. And
Kansas.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve Fisher and the Workaholics.
Yes, thank you. Did they end up winning that game? I never saw.
Yes.
Before. I thought
that's what Steve's telling us.
Yes.
Beat number 20 Kansas yesterday.
So you can't overlook them
Nope.
at home or not. So is it doable? For sure. But it's not a guarantee. Obviously, it never is. Especially, again, Michigan State, maybe not one of the top tier teams, but it's on the road, and you just never know what's going to happen.
You don't know. And we're going to talk about Michigan State here in a few minutes. So, and then the last one, and then actually I think Quang brought it up in the Workaholics. I had it as a lingering question as well. We saw some pictures of Grace Berger with a brace on, no crutches this week. And even yesterday was reported that she looked to be moving even a little better than she was on Sunday. So how long January, but I've kind of pegged that all along. It would be the earliest. I think that's my opinion. I think to be on track. If from what I'm seeing, pictures, I haven't seen anything live of her. I haven't been there. Obviously, Richie's around a little bit more than I am, living in Bloomington. But I would say there's a real possibility we could see Grace Berger at least back on the floor sometime middle of January.
Yeah, and sorry, Jeff, you cut out just a little bit for me. But I don't know if you mentioned it's being reported he is starting to do stationary shooting and bike work right now. So yeah, okay. Sorry about that.
I didn't say that, but it was in the Workaholics. The Workaholics were talking about it. So
yeah. So we'll see. So are you thinking hopefully still in January is something?
Yeah, I think middle of January. I think mid-January is when I've thought all along that once they said she wasn't having surgery, I thought maybe that to me was the best tell sign. And so I kind of thought all along mid-January would be the earliest. Well, if Richie's right about 3 to 4 weeks, that puts us right about where I would have thought all along was sometime about mid-January.
Yep. Awesome.
And that would get her back, and that gets her back where she can at least get some of the rust off, get a little bit of conditioning back before we hit the stretch in February that just becomes the grind.
Yep. All right.
So you got anything you want to add about Grace?
Nope. I was just going to say I don't have anything else on those or any other additional lingering questions.
So let's talk about Michigan State real quick. I'll take these first couple bullet points and I'll let you talk about some of the stats. IU's next opponent is Michigan State. That will be a week from today, December 29th. I'm already thinking about 2023 here. IU is 31-47 all time, including 14-26 in East Lansing, where they will be playing next week. IU has won 3 of the last 4 meetings, including a 76-58 victory in Bloomington last season. And this season, Michigan State is 8-5 overall, but 0-2 in the Big Ten. And their conference losses are to Purdue in overtime at home and at Ohio State by 6.
Yeah, so the Spartans here are averaging just under 82 points per game, and they have a +8 rebounding margin. They shoot around 44% field goal percentage and 32% from the 3 as a team. However, their free throw shooting has not been real great, only 63%. From a defensive standpoint, they're holding opponents to only 35% shooting and 27% from the 3. So it seems like, in particular, at least the games they played and looking at stats, that maybe the perimeter difference is definitely on point, which is interesting because we do have a number of 3-point shooters. So I'll be curious to see how they are able to handle that and still handle Mackenzie Holmes down low. In terms of turnovers, they do force 23 turnovers per game. So hopefully our turnover bug is not something that rears its head here in a week. And then in terms of individuals to watch, Kamara McDaniel is a 5'10" guard. She leads them with 14 points per game. And then Matilda, I think it's Eek, is that right? Or Eck?
I think it's Eck.
Yeah, she is a 6-foot sophomore forward, and she scores around 11.5 points per game. Their coach is Susie Merchant. She's in their 16th season with the program, and she has a very respectable, fantastic record of 319 and 177. In terms of logistics, it is in East Lansing. That game will be at an early tip again for a weekday, 3:00 Eastern or 2 Central. And if you're wanting to watch it, you will need Big Ten Plus program subscription.
Yeah, unfortunately, but yeah, this is a game that does worry me a little bit, just because it's up in East Lansing. Michigan State has kind of at times been a little bit of a thorn in our side, even as Terry Moore has got the program playing better. So. But I think the one thing I'm going to be looking for is, and this was kind of pointed out in the Workaholics, they're 8-5, but their schedule strength is not real strong. They have really feasted on some really bad teams, and they've gotten blown out by a couple of the really good teams they've played. So hopefully, Iowa State, and there was somebody else that I can't think of off the top of my head, and I'm not looking at their schedule right in front of me, but I just know there were a couple games that stood out to me as losses that I was like, ooh. So that 8 that they've got, then that kind of got my attention of who they were playing to get the 8. So, that's one of those. And like I said, though, they played Purdue tough, Purdue, Michigan, and actually Purdue was actually up for most of that game in East Lansing, and they made a big comeback to get it into overtime. And then, but played Ohio State really strong. And so in Columbus. So those are things to kind of keep an eye on. So anything else you want to add in about Michigan State? We will be live. We will be live after that game, roughly 5:00 Eastern, right here. We're doing the work.
Yep. No, I don't really have anything. For me, I'll just be, again, hoping that we don't let Michigan State force all the turnovers that they seem to be having force with, again, granted, yes, with some of their 8 wins have been against some really lower ranking teams, but it is at Michigan State. So they just need to come. They need to be ready to go. I'm hoping they come out a little bit more ready than they did in that Penn State game on the road. So that's what I'll be really looking for. They got to come out with a nice start, and they have to be clean and focused and no turnovers.
Yeah, and thanks to Steve and the Workaholics, it was Oregon that I was trying to think of that beat them bad. And then he also points out that Wake Forest also beat them, and both of those games were quality Power 5 opponents that Michigan State struggled with. So we got to try and wrap this up here a little bit, as AC Radio will be coming on after us. Not too long after us anyway. We're keeping you updated about our Hoosier alums. They're playing around the world. We've got Alexa Golbe and Nicole Cardano Hillary playing in Spain. Amanda Cahill playing in Luxembourg, and Amanda's just having an excellent year. She had almost a triple-double earlier in the weekend. Tyra Buss continues to lead the Lithuanian League in scoring, and Jory Davis is playing in Italy. We've been updating that in the community and on the Twitter feed, and you can follow us on Twitter at DTW IUWBB. If you just search "Doing the Work" and leave a space in between the words on some Twitter, if you do the search on Twitter, it'll come up. For news and info, or check out the Assembly Call community page. Both Kathy and I update regularly things going on with the IU women, and AC Radio will be coming on after this. Is pretty much they will have Coach Tonsoni, Andy Bottoms, and their guest Chronic Hoosier tonight as part of the broadcast. And then they'll also, I assume, I didn't look to see if it's a fit, but they should be on tomorrow after the Kennesaw State game as well. Also, be sure to catch and subscribe to the next episode of Crimson Cast, part of our Back Home Network family. And our next show, as we mentioned, will be next Thursday, the 29th at approximately 5 Eastern, 4 Central, and that'll be following the Michigan State game. All right, so Kathy, it's time for last call. What's on your mind as we wrap things up?
Yeah, Jeff, just again, a 12-0 start. Honestly, I think we didn't expect that coming into this far into the season, that we would still be undefeated, and it's a good unexpected. I think the team is really gelling. Even with Grace being out, I think that Sydney coming in now as the starting role, and she was earlier off the bench. She's just filled both roles very fantastic, and our transfers are really starting to fit together. some things to clean up, and that's what it always is. We're never going to be perfect as a team or people or players or whatever we are. We always strive for it, though, right? That's what we're always looking for. So we'll never get there, but that's what we keep working for. And I think that's what we see from our women. And I just love the calm demeanor about them. They always seem to be coming out. They're ready. They're focused. They're ready to do the work. They put it in on the defensive end in particular, and they are just a fun team to watch. So I'm excited to see them again next Thursday. So glad that I don't have to work, so I can watch them live.
Yeah, and we'll be obviously I'll be off as well, so I'll be watching that game. You also talking about Twitter. Usually, Kathy or I, if we're able to watch the game live, we'll be kind of live updating on Twitter. So another reason to follow us on Twitter as well. I will just say that I'm excited as well, 12-0, but I just want to see. I don't know how long it'll last. I hope it lasts a few more games. But the Big Ten is going to be a grind. There's going to be a game that jumps up and bites us. I would like to see us remain undefeated at home. But that, again, we get to February, that part's a grind. I think when we talked about this on the earlier show in the year when we previewed the schedule, this part of the Big Ten schedule, and this is before Grace got hurt, obviously, but this was the part of the Big Ten schedule we really felt kind of better about, that we could make a nice little run. It may not go undefeated in this portion of January, but we maybe only lose once in this portion and be really in a pretty good place. And then you got that grind in February where we really finish off with some really, really tough opponents at the top of the tier with that. So I think it's really important for them to go out to Michigan State and get a win and kind of keep not only the streak going, but just kind of keep the pressure on the other teams in the Big Ten, because that will move us to 3-0 in the league. So that's kind of my last call. Kathy, anything else you want to push in here?
No. Excited to keep going in the season and talking things over with you as we go.
Yeah, I look forward to next week. If you want to see us do the show live and be a part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/assembly call. You can be part of our private community as well. Join today at join.assemblycall.com. That's join.assemblycall.com. Special thanks to John Ringer of Rig Design for designing our new logos. And you see one of our 4 new logos that John has designed for us in the upper right-hand corner if you're watching on YouTube. And also a big thank to Bob Thompson for our new music that you heard throughout the broadcast. And we want to thank all of you for listening. The Workaholics here as well in the live chat. We'll be back to talk IU hoops again with you next Thursday after the Michigan State game. Until then, keep your elbows in and your eyes on the rim, and go Hoosiers.
All right. Good night, everybody.
See you, everybody.